I want to just thank Renee, thank Jacob, thank everybody that's participating and took time out their day to listen to me speak. I know they gave me 30 to 40 minutes. Trust me, I'll be on the ladder because I'm definitely interested in the questions that people may have for me. And also thank you to the interpreters that are here tonight too. When we think about community and access is one of the biggest things. I think we should always kind of highlight and giving people access to opportunities, giving people access to events like this, and access to just to be a part, regardless of what type of handicap or disability or just accessibility people may have. So that's very appreciative to me. Um, I am an explorer of social change. Born and raised here in Nashville, Tennessee, um, 3 or 4 generations in. And when we think about Nashville, we think of Music City, USA, but we also think of like sit-ins, civil rights movements, Fisk University, American Baptist College, Tennessee State University, Meharry. Is a rich history of just social change movements and just creating impact, just not for Nashville, but for the United States. Some of our greatest social changers, activists, lived in Nashville, Tennessee, and also just participated in creating change for our country based where the city I'm come from. With all that being said, I had no idea that I'd be doing this work growing up here in Nashville with that rich history. Because believe it or not, many of those things aren't taught in public schools here, even to this day. I think most of this information is getting out now just due to the internet, due to technology. So we're learning more about this rich history, but unfortunately, it's still not being taught. Civics in general, right? Is still not being taught in many of our public schools. So many of these things you have to utilize your public libraries or hear these stories from parents or grandparents or great grandparents or just loved ones or peers that know this information. And so growing up in Nashville, I honestly thought, I thought I was going to the NBA. But I stopped growing right at 5'9", and so that didn't happen. And so I took my talents to college and was a student, and majored in economics. And even still then, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I picked economics. I was like, hey, I'm a black man in the United States. I need to pick a strong major to just have the opportunity for success here. And so that's what I did. But while I was in college, I always had this notion of traveling, of exploring. Didn't know how I was going to do it. Didn't know where I was going to do it. But I always had that with me, just trying to explore different communities, different humanities, different people, different cultures. But I didn't come from a background of knowledge or generational knowledge or generational wealth that I knew people that had that type of experience of traveling or exploring the world. So I had to try to figure that out on my own. And so after graduating from Middle Tennessee State University, I was able to figure out my way, and really dive deeper into community, start volunteering. I really knew that I wanted to do something that was going to be impactful. Didn't know what it was going to be, but I wanted to put myself in proximity into what that looked like. And for me, that really started here in Nashville, working with nonprofits, volunteering, but it really got amplified during my time serving with Jacob in Peace Corps Paraguay under Community Economic Development. Once I did that, it really changed my landscape of what I could do, how I could do it, and then also just exposed me to different communities in what that looked like. And so that was my journey, really the catalyst, the origin of my journey to like really figuring out how to become an explorer of social change and then identifying as that. And Jacob, you can go to the next slide. And so you can go to the next one after that. Appreciate it. And so and really once I did that, I really started to figure out um how to be in community. A lot of times many of us believe we're in community, but we're really in cliques, right? Many of us believe we're in community, but we're really in cliques. What does that mean, Jerome, right? Well, a clique is a closed group. A community is an open group, right? A clique is a closed group. Community is an open group. So a lot of times, many of us believe we're in a community, but this community, you know, thinks like we think, talks like we talk, looks like we look like, and really just very, homogenous to, our own identity, right? And it's really hard to garner a different perspective, being in that type of environment, being in that type of clique. Unfortunately, many of us, especially like for myself, that grew up here in Nashville, was grew up very segregated. Even though it's very diverse, it's diversely segregated, right? And so we can grow up in our own kind of black bubbles, white bubbles, API bubbles, Latinx bubbles, and really be kind of limited on our perspective just due to the lack of proximity to other community members, which I think is that's why it's important to explore, right? That's why it's important to get out and have different relationships, but just different proximity to other community members that will kind of shape and change and even challenge your own perspective and maybe even give you some things to wrestle with inside of your own kind of your thoughts or education, right, that you may have. And so doing Peace Corps really opened me up to that idea of being in different communities and embracing that, right? But also getting to learn a lot about myself that I don't think I could have quite learned just living in Nashville, Tennessee, just living in the United States my whole life, right? And so I was able to take that experience in Paraguay and also live in Costa Rica for a year, right? Also live in China for 2 years, right? Also do a short-term stay in the Philippines. And while I'm doing all of these things, I'm building community, but I'm doing community and economic development work. I am not on a vacation in any of these. Like I'm not, this is I'm doing real work and I'm really trying to build power while exploring different communities, right? And figuring out what that is, figuring out what my lane is during that time. And I was able to figure that out. And so back in at the end of 2019, around October, November, I was able to return home from China right before like the whole COVID-19 thing hit, right? Just I dodged it living in China during that time, but it hit us around March, April 2020. But I was able to come home and start really, community organizing again. And it's a vast difference, right? I come from a community economic development background, but also a community organizing background. And people say, well, what's the difference, right? It's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of the same things, but the difference is, if I had to use like a great example, it would be, say there's a pond, right, with fish in it. From a community organizer standpoint, say there's a pond with fish in it, and the community doesn't have access to that pond to be able to fish, right? An organizer will build power with the community and kind of rally and organize people in order to get access to that pond with the fish so they could, potentially feed themselves, right? That's what an organizer would do. From the community economic development side, excuse me, it would be more so they have access to the pond, they have access to the fish, but they don't have fishing rods to go fishing to capture the fish, right? So as a community economic developer, I would say, okay, hey, here are the tools to build a fishing rod and catch the fish, but also sustainability is important in community economic development, right? So it's not to where I want to come in and I'm the only person that knows how to fish or the only person that knows how to build a rod. And once I leave, now the community can no longer fish or build rods. It's say, hey, this is how you build the rod. Here's are the tools. This is how you do it. And so you allow those community members in that community to be able to do that for themselves. Therefore, when I depart, that can still happen and go on. So that's the kind of two main differences between community organizing and economic community development, but they definitely have similar traits in the work. So I was able to come home and do those things. And again, like still being in community, coming back to Nashville, I was still trying to figure out like what my Nashville community was because again, I grew up in my own black bubble. You had to tell me I thought Nashville was 100% black, right? Which is not the case. Where it's actually a super minority black and super majority white. But because it's again diversity segregated, it's easily to get that confused. And so here comes the pivot that I made that led me kind of to what I'm doing today is figuring out, well, hey, um, how can I embrace diversity, right? How can I embrace my community, but also use all of the things I've been able to do through travel, through the grassroots work, community economic development, organizing? How can I put that in a media form to kind of fill a void, right? How can I amplify um, people that are doing the work and create kind of like just solution-based conversations in general, right? And so what I did is I created Deep Dish Conversations. I created this podcast, and it's really kind of started in 2019 when I was living in China. I was hosting like roundtable talks. I was getting exposed to all of these different cultures, just happened to be in China, but I was meeting people from all over the world. And I was just curious on how they dealing with like the same social issues that we deal with here in the United States, or how things different, right? So I was learning so much. I was truly embracing diversity in all of those different things. And what that taught me was one, it's better to call people in instead of calling people out, right? It's better to call people in instead of call people out. And a lot of times I think when we see people that have, different ideas than us, or just, just we just different, right? It's easier for us to criticize maybe what they think is different or what they do is different. And that criticizing is, adversary, right? And that doesn't allow for a relationship to be built or for civil conversation. And so again, instead of calling people out, I wanted to do something that called people in, right? Which is something I think we should all practice. And so me starting this podcast was calling people in, right? Calling people in to talk about the issues, talk about how can we combat these things, these social constructs that all of us are affected by, regardless of race, gender, identity, background, ethnicity. We're all affected by these social constructs, maybe on different levels, right? Of course, but we're all affected by it, right? And so Deep Dish Conversations was born. And the pizza is my favorite food. And so, why not have these great conversations while eating some amazing pizza too? People probably just came for the free pizza, but that's okay. We still had some amazing conversations. And so that kind of really just started something that I think that was really needed in the timing, right? This is 2020 when I started this, and we all know that summer of racial reckoning happened in 2020 with George Floyd, right? Compounding with that, you had 90 people a day, 90 new people a day moving to Nashville, right? And so we had this booming economy, we had this racial reckoning on. People are trying to figure out like what is their place, how do they learn, how do they unlearn about the social issues of the day. And Deep Dish Conversations gave them a platform to do so. And so maybe if I started this 10 of 10 years ago, maybe it doesn't have the same type of impact, but just the timing just worked out perfectly for me. And it just created something here in Nashville that that was missing, right? And then what it did is allow people to start having different conversations and bring up things that maybe they wouldn't bring up, or even try to wrestle with things personally that they never really wrestle with. And what made it a great platform still to this day is that I didn't pick a particular side of agenda, left, right, the middle. I invited everybody literally to the table to share a slice of pizza, a deep dish conversation, and have a deep dish conversation with Deep Dish Pizza. And that don't mean I automatically agree with everything or their synopsis or their solutions or what they was doing to impact the community, but it was a civil and brave space to have the conversation and for me to learn as well and garner a different perspective. And I think people really appreciated that, and also allow people to feel welcomed and to open up about things they never opened up about, or discuss things they never talked about. And that was the whole thing of really calling people in instead of calling people out, right? And also embracing people's uniqueness and not necessarily thinking like diversity is different. Diversity is uniqueness. And I really like embrace that and try to give people an opportunity to really just have that space. And we use, or we hear the term safe space a lot of times, which I tend not to use just because I'm a black man in the United States. I don't know what a safe space really is, but I do know about a brave space. I do know about being brave as a Black man. And so that was a key term for me too around starting this platform around Deepest Conversations. I wanted people to have a civil conversation and also be in a brave space to have that civil conversation and be vulnerable. And not just me, but the guests as well. And so I think people really appreciated that too. Is like they had the vulnerability of myself, but also the vulnerability of the guests. And we was having these brave conversations and really allowing people that like we can talk about these things in a civil manner and not be adversarial. But again, it's in embracing those uniquenesses, but also inviting people in instead of calling people out. It's easy to criticize. Nothing gets solved in the comments on Twitter or Facebook, right? Nothing gets solved there, right? But we call people in instead of calling them out. I really think that's a great way to really embrace diversity. And with diversity, what we understand is we give proximity. We start getting different proximity to different people, which can build empathy. What does that mean, right? And so if I have no proximity to a person from the Chinese community, right? Like pictured in the slide, right? If I have no proximity to them, maybe once an issue is brought up in the Chinese community or in the API community, maybe I don't build that empathy for them because I can easily say, well, I don't know them. They're not in my community, right? It doesn't affect me, right? It's easy to do that. It's easy to not care, right? But if I'm intentional about building relationships, if I'm intentional about exploring social change and different perspectives within my own community and have a different proximity or have proximity in general, even if it's a little bit to somebody that's from a different community or have a different diversity of thought, I can build that empathy for them. Once I hear something, I can have the empathy and say, hey, let me reach out to them. What can I do? Right. And so again, a lot of times when we even think about diversity, it's just not skin color, right? There's many of us that have a diversified thoughts, right? We all don't think the same. And I think that may be, if not more important, equally as important as any other type of diversity that we may be able to recognize and identify. Again, to me, I recognize diversity not as different, but it's just a uniqueness that we all have. And I'm curious about exploring that different uniqueness and building those relationships, right? And so with all of that, that's why I really came to identify myself as not just an organizer, not just activist or community economic developer. Like I'm an explorer. That's always been with me, right? I want to explore different humanities, different cultures, different people, and I think that's like hugely important when it comes to social change and getting out of our own bubbles and exploring that different diversity and seeing and what that looks like. And with all this going on, like this impact is happening, right? And so that's how I get a book. I had no intentions of writing a book, thinking about a book. I was tunnel vision about really just doing the work, right? There's really tunnel vision about doing the work and seeing kind of what that looked like. And so Vanderbilt University reached out to me and said, hey, we think this would be a great book. Use some of your conversations and excerpts and to shape around conversations and really focus on the voices of social change. And I'll say, yeah, that's amazing. That sounds great. Let's figure this out. And so what the book was able to do was again expose people to different voices of social change and again give them different perspectives of different voices and leaders that's happening in Middle Tennessee and primarily in Nashville that are doing the work, but maybe doing the work a little differently. But the thing was to encourage people to explore and figure out who are these kind of community members wherever you may live, whether it's in Vermont, whether it's in Michigan, whether it's in New York, California, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, wherever it may be, like who are these individuals, who's these characters in this book that you can identify with that are trying to do the work, that have a voice of social change, but maybe have a little bit of different perspective from you or others that's even in the book, which is okay. But I think we should all be exploring these different perspectives because different perspectives and different works are necessary. And again, like long as people are trying, that should be the highlight. The highlight shouldn't be, oh, well, they doing it this way and I don't like it, and let me criticize it. Again, let me call them out. That shouldn't be the way that we're thinking, right? We should be thinking, oh, they're trying. I'm interested on and why they're doing it that way. Let me reach out and call them in. And so I was able to do that. And that's what Deepest Conversations was all about. Being able to use the voices of other people to really get people to think about different perspectives. And it was and it was this, successful and it really worked out that way. But a big part of this too, I seen myself start to become more of a mobilizer than organizer, right? Because I'm pivoting into this media space now, right? So I have the podcast, I have the book, and then comes the television show with Nashville Public Television PBS, right? So now I'm in TV. Again, these are things that I didn't necessarily see myself doing. Again, I'm just doing the work. I'm just trying to create impact. I'm not thinking about numbers or views or likes. I'm thinking about impact. That's what mattered to me most. And so TV is just another way to mobilize people to create impact and being able to do that again, thinking solution based, but also just thinking about how I can create as much impact as possible. But the main thing is like, how can I amplify the things that are working? How can I amplify the things that are combating the social constructs that we're affected by, right? And that's the whole process of thinking solution based. At this point in my life, if you're not thinking solution based, or really, we're probably really not aligned, right? Because again, it's easy to focus on the challenges. It's easy to focus on what's not working. It's easy to focus on really the things, the low hanging fruit that we all know exist already, right? I think is more important to really think about who are the individuals that are combating these problems that many of us are facing, right? What does that look like, and how can I be a part of that, right? That's why I shift everything to solution based at this point, from conversations to the work that I'm trying to do. I want to focus on how do we fix the issues, and more importantly, who are fixing the issues. I want to talk to those individuals, and I want to amplify those individuals, because we don't see enough of that. And my idea is like that's a void in media that we're having today. And so when I'm thinking about exploring social change, when I'm thinking about media, when I'm thinking about just content in general, there's a void lacking, right? We all go through our algorithms and timelines and things like that, and we see the same things, but like, how many times do we actually see those that are combating these issues on a regular basis? How many times do we see those individuals championed? And it's way less than we do the negative things, right? Unfortunately. But I want to play my part in fixing that, especially in the media industry, and really allowing people to see like, hey, these people are doing great work and these people are existing. And it also, kind of fed into my niche and what I do. I get to explore and be curious with these individuals. And what curiosity does, right? It allows you to be open, right? And not be judgmental of individuals that look different than you, that talk different than you, that come from different backgrounds, right? And so that's why I always try to tell people too, when you're exploring social change, when you think about social issues in general, don't be too quick to fall into your implicit biases, which we all have, right? We all have these implicit biases, but once you recognize them, you can fix them. You can unlearn these things, which allows you to be more curious instead of judgmental. Not saying being judgmental doesn't add some value to your life, because sometimes being judgmental can probably save your life. Like, I don't know about it, looks maybe sketchy or whatever. It can save your life. But when we talk about social change, though, I try to tell people to lean into being more curious than judgmental, because curiosity allows you to be open and allows you to be not as adversarial as well. Because we all know, once we have those kind of adversarial thoughts or adversarial kind of mentions, the conversation can go left real quick or go right real quick. It can just go bad real quick. And so being curious prevents that from happening. Asking people, where did you come from that thought? Oh, that's interesting. Can you tell me more about that? Allows people to really open up more to you when they're talking about their ideas of social change, and allows you to build some type of relationship. And again, that doesn't mean that you're going to agree with everything that they're saying, right? But you may find some common ground. But at the end of the day, it's about garnering a different perspective and figuring out, hey, okay, that makes sense. I understand now why this person feels this way about our education system. Well, I understand now better why this person feels this way about police. Well, I understand why this person feels this way about environmental racism or whatever it may be. And so that really was able to shape my mind and purpose. But I wanted to bring that not just to me, but my entire community. When we talk about, being in community, we talk about embracing diversity, when we talk about thinking solution based, right? Those are all the things that I really wanted to do. And Jacob will appreciate this. When we first got into Peace Corps, into our sites, right? They told us for the first 3 months, don't do anything, right? Just listen. And I took that out into the real world and just listening, being an active listener. And many of us struggle with doing that, right? But when we're exploring social change, it's about being an active listener. Just take 3 months, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or whatever it may be, and just listen to what communities are saying. In the organizing world, or even the community economic development world, it would be called like a community assessment, right? Figure out what the community needs and wants and what they're saying, and being an active listener is a huge part of that. When you're talking about calling people in instead of calling people out, because if you're gonna call them in, you gotta listen, right? You can't be doing all the talking. You have to really intentionally want to be an active listener to your community members and to your peers, to what their idea of social change looks like, or what do they care about in general. And just having more people that care is important as well. And so that's the evolution for me when it came to starting off here in Nashville, when it comes to trying to figure out what I was going to do, trying to figure out what my lane was going to be in social change and really caring about it, but trying to figure out where a void is that I could fill, and trying to also just create my own path and something that, I could base my own lived experience off of, right? Which we all have our own unique stories, and we can use that in our social change journey as well. Because again, I use all of my travel experiences living abroad that's unique to my life, and shaping that into how I can create social change and start with my community. I could have easily stayed in Costa Rica with coconuts and papaya, just in my backyard, and just living a good life for sure. But I definitely wanted to be intentional about coming back home to my community and learning more about my community, growing myself and growing my perspective myself, but also being able to plant different seeds from my different experiences, and saying, hey, like, this is what I've learned. This is what I feel has been valuable to me in this journey when it comes to social change. And I think this is going to be valuable to everybody, in their own personal way. And you don't have to explore by going to Peace Corps or living in China or Costa Rica or the Philippines. Again, explore the next side over, explore the next state over, and figure out what you learn, about community, about diversity, about thinking solution based. And that's what I was being able to do. And it's been a great path. But we're in a time right now where, when we think about social change, we can't be silent, right? Everybody must participate in it, right? If you're going to talk about it, you got to figure out how you're going to participate in it. And a lot of times silence doesn't benefit the oppressed, it benefits the oppressor. All right. Silence doesn't benefit the oppressed, it benefits the oppressor. So we all must take a stance at this particular time in our country, in our society, to speak up, speak truth to power, wherever you may be. And a lot of times that may come with sacrificing or putting your own privilege or comfort on the line. Are you willing to do that? I'm willing to do it. But that's the questions we have to ask ourselves. And that's what's necessary in a time like this. Um, just a few days ago, over the weekend, right here in Nashville, Tennessee, we had a neo-Nazi march downtown on Broadway, right? And Broadway in Nashville is like the Madison Square in New York, right? In comparison, per capita, we do the same type of numbers of people or population in that area, right? Again, this is Broadway, Music City, Nashville, 90 people moving here a day. And they had a neo-Nazi march with flags and everything. They were masked up just this weekend in 2024, right? And so we're in a time to where that's what we're fighting against, for those of us who are trying to create better communities, trying to be exposed to social change. And we can't be silent in the midst of things like that, being adversarial, being opposing to what we're trying to do, right? And so I always try to challenge people, we have to speak up at times like this. We can't stay silent. And that's just a recent example that just happened a couple of days ago, right here in Nashville. A Nashville that's a very progressive, liberal city, right? A blue dot in a red state, many would say. And that happened right here in face of us. And so we have to continue to explore. We have to continue to be change makers at our own pace, in our own journey, in our own particular way. But we all have a responsibility to participate. Um, and we all have to think solution based in that participation. And our participation can't just be tweeting or Facebooking or disagreeing with somebody on Facebook. It has to go beyond that at this particular point in time. And that don't mean you have to start off at 100. Just wake your way up. Crawl before you walk, as they say. Start at 5 and make it up to 10 and 20, but you have to participate, right, on some type of level. And that's what I try to do every day. I try to just make sure I'm participating and I'm also building with community. And it's not about me, this is beyond me. This fight will go on way past my lifetime. And I just want to play my part. I just want to participate. And I want to do that through exploring social change and being able to fill a void and being able to, bring people with me and encourage people to do the same way and explore in their own particular way. At this particular moment now, I'm working on a really cool project called Explore Social Change with Jerome Moore. So I haven't showed, this is not out yet. This is unreleased footage that you all are seeing. So I wanted to show you all this because I think it's very special, but it also is something that this is the kind of the biggest next thing that I'm working on personally, to one, highlight solution-based projects and people that are combating the social constructs with tangible kind of ideas and projects in their community. Because again, it's easy to say, I don't know what's going on. I'm not aware. I didn't know they existed. And I want to fill that void. I want to make sure people know that there are projects and initiatives all across the world that are trying to combat these social constructs that are happening in their community, and they're playing their part. And so I'm gonna share my screen and share this video with you all, and hopefully you all enjoy it. What's going on? This is Explore Social Change with Jerome Moore, and today we're visiting Jaffe Judah Recycling Reinvest, and we're gonna be talking about recycling and trash and some more stuff. So come on. So Jaffe is driving crazy right now. I don't know what Jaffe doing, but we made it. I'm the lead volunteer now. I'm doing all the work. They gave me the job of tossing the cans in the back.
Once I, got out of prison and I started to be involved with community work, I started to pay attention to some of the environmental degradation and pollution that was around this area.
How does that sit with you now that you knowing, like, I'm coming in not to do any harm to your community as a black man, but I'm actually going in and want to make it safer, want to make it cleaner, and I want you to be a part of it too. How does that representation make you feel?
And so I feel like if you got a clean community, you'll feel better about yourself.
Right.
Your morale will go up, and it's proven. Your morale does go up and crime is reduced.
This is not recyclable. If you eating this good chili beans, just know you can't recycle this. Hey, put that on the ground right quick. Boom!
Don't litter. Don't litter.
Hey, the first one. Boom, there we go.
Let's continue to take environmental action to curb crime. Let's continue to figure out how we can put on a sustainable lens and not only focus on how to bring in money to this city, but how to create these communities to be livable and lovable.
We got this money. We balling. We got $7.
You hear me?
7.
So
2 for you, 5 for me.
Dang, that's just like Texas. Just like Texas.
Last bag. Got bags in bags.
You having fun, man?
You got bags in bags.
Hey, he having a ball.
I am having a ball.
And this is what this is what I do, this is what we do, man. Like, different comedian, be more so.
And so that was just a sneak peek, a sizzle. And I just gotta say this, I'm in Nashville, I'm from Nashville, we're from the South, we are very country. And so for the interpreters to be able to interpret all of that, that's amazing work. I am impressed for sure. Shout outs to the interpreters for being able to interpret that. But that right now, that's those type of projects, those type of initiatives, I think are vital to where we are right now, in the United States, not just in Nashville, in Tennessee, but all across the world when it comes to figuring out and identifying those people in our community that are exploring social change, that are continuing to be innovative, with finding solutions on their own that they can participate in, when it comes to creating better communities, safer communities, cleaner communities, and building community power in any way they have. So if there's anybody out in Vermont that's listening that knows this initiative, that has a community project, I am more than willing and happy to come and do an episode with you all, because I want to have that little feel of Anthony Bourdain and Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs, but focus it more on community projects and social change initiatives, not jobs and food. And so that's the next big thing for me, and for me it's always important to diversify the different access that you can give people to these type of ideas. Everybody doesn't read a book. Everybody doesn't listen to a podcast. Everybody doesn't, watch TV. Everybody doesn't watch a show. But, if I can diversify on how I deliver my message around exploring social change and amplifying solution-based voices and solution-based individuals, I have a better possibility, a probability, I should say, of being able to capture somebody's attention with the work that I'm trying to do, and hopefully shift their mind and encourage them as well to be a part of exploring social change and being in community and embracing diversity and being an active listener, and being curious and not judgmental. All of those different things, right? And just exploring in their own particular way. And letting them know that they can have fun doing it. They can be brave and be courageous in doing it. And also, like, they don't have to do it alone. There's other people, there's other comrades, there's other community members that also care. And we're all learning. I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything. I'm not this super expert. I'm a person that's constantly learning and unlearning and trying to just be curious and figure out how I can continue to make impact in different ways. In my lane, right? Exploring social change, that's my lane. Being an explorer, that's my lane. And I'm just like to stick in my lane and lean on other people that do other great things that I don't do, and see how we can build power together through collaboration and partnership, right? And that's what being a community is also, being able to get a diversity of stakeholders that do different things to collaborate and be stronger together. And we have to continue to do that through community development, organizing work, whatever that may looks like. Because again, United States, we're in a very peculiar time, contentious time, I think. And we all have to play our part in participating on, making sure we just have healthy and great communities, whatever that may look like. And again, I want to just emphasize, that don't mean we're going to agree on everything. That doesn't mean we have to agree on everything. That doesn't mean we're going to have to be besties. But if we both care and we both trying to create some type of impact for our communities and play our part, there's some common ground that we can work with on that. And again, just build some type of camaraderie to where we can make a better community and a just community, for us and those who will come after us. And so that's Jerome Moore, being exposed to social change. I hope I was able to impart some education, some knowledge, some good word today. And I just appreciate you all for y'all's time and commitment of being here. And I'm an open book. So for the Q&A, please ask me as many questions as you want. Get as personal as you want. You all heard my journey and just kind of where I started to where I am now and what I'm trying to do next with just to explore social change with Jerome Moore. So please, I'm here to answer all and any questions. And again, thank you for your time and being here tonight, to learn more about, exploring social change.
Great. Well, thank you, Jerome, for this. It was great to kind of get this inside access view on kind of your journey, and of course, like for us to catch up a little bit with these topics and whatnot. And so I have to ask, maybe, which is maybe more of a difficult question for you, having gone through this, is so what do you choose to put on the pizza that you bring together with people? It's like, do you ask them first, or do you have kind of like the go-to recipe that you go
Yeah.
use?
No, I definitely ask them. I give whatever preference people have. I definitely lean to their preference. The only thing is, like, if you ask to put fruit on your pizza, I kind of look at you funny. I'm not a put fruit like pineapple on pizza. I
Yeah.
think you may be an alien if you enjoy that type of pizza, but that's okay. That's all right. But and people are gonna say, well, tomato is a fruit. True, tomato sauce, I get it. But there's barriers, there's a line drawn.
All right. Like there's the savory, and then the dessert pizzas that
Yeah,
people
it's,
can
it's
put
you
all the
know,
chocolate and fruit on that
some
they
people
want,
some people
right?
get out of control with it. Yeah.
No problems. And as we're kind of waiting for questions to come in from the chat, from your experiences doing these interviews, what are like some of the best opportunities you've had, or some of like the most memorable interviews that you've done kind of going through this project?
Yeah, and so I think one of the most memorable interviews I've done, it would be probably pre-deep dish conversations.
Hmm.
It was actually pictured in a slide, me and Mr. Dong in China. That was kind of like the pilot of everything. Like, let me figure out if I can have these conversations in China, right? So there was like an interpreter and everything, but it really gave me insight of Chinese nationals that were trying to do the work, right? Because you don't hear that being you don't, like, it's a different narrative, right? That we get
Right.
that's happening in China with Chinese community members, and a lot of times that narrative comes from a bureaucracy kind of narrative and not a community everyday living person narrative. So I think that was definitely one of the most insightful, impactful interviews that I've done. Just in the like just the start of this. The second one after that will probably be just talking to, the chief diversity of police,
Hmm.
right? Just being able to talk to a police officer, and call out some of the things and be honest about, like, kind of the system of police, and how it's been harmful, and or can we do police differently? What does that look like? And getting just the honest feedback from somebody that is a high ranking officer, that's also a person of color, that has to kind of have that double consciousness maybe around policing and people of color, and that historical kind of context, but just having an open conversation over pizza, and being able to have that conversation and what that looks like, and just again just being a brave space. And so I think those are the two conversations that kind of stick out. I always tell people my favorite conversation is the one I haven't had yet.
Right.
And so I'm always so because you never know, man. Hopefully, the goal is to, to be able to have these conversations with people all over the world.
No, I think that's a great idea to kind of lead with, is like, where's this next conversation going to go, right? Or like,
Yeah,
you may have the same few questions to try to warm people up, but people will always answer them differently, right? And so I think that really, of course, really resonated with me, the importance of listening and kind of being an active listener, not only when you're doing an interview, but in life. And because again,
most
that's something
definitely.
that's harder to grow as a skill. And I think especially with social media and other things, kind of building on um, that kind of perspective. But I think that's
Yeah,
really important.
for sure.
Um, we have a few questions from one Ron Miller here. So let me try to summarize this. Um, and so again, kind of relating to the polarization in society, it's like, how in your work have you been able to kind of bring people from across different either political or cultural divides, and try to build that trust and dialogue? What are some successes from those
Yeah,
experiences?
yeah, I think thank you, Ron, for that question too. I think it's important to note you gonna have some people who you'll never be able to call in. Like, they're gonna be, and we all may know some, they're gonna be some people who just rooted in their ideology or their thinking, to where you can't have a civil conversation about different perspectives at all. So I think that's important to note, and that's okay. But I think it's important for us to recognize that. And Ron, I think what has been able to allow me to bring different people with even different perspectives than my own is being someone that is non-adversarial and really staying curious. And so how I position my questions to somebody around maybe their thinking or their decision making has really allowed me to be able to have these conversations and want people to be on my show. Right. I get anywhere between 35 to 40 guest requests a week, right? For just different people on different scales, from political scales to just everyday community member scales. And a large majority of that is because they know, one, I'm not trying to be adversarial or throw curveballs and capture a moment, right? I'm really interested in figuring out maybe why they made the decision that they made, or figure out, like, is there something deeper that happened or hasn't happened in their own personal life that, that has leaned them this way or that way. And so I really try to do that, Ron, is really like actively, if they're on the opposite side of me, that's even better for me, because maybe I can learn something, and maybe they can learn something to me. And I'm not there to try to convince them, right? A lot of times, like, you may see people trying to project their own ideologies of thinking on other people, and that's not my objective. Like, my objective is not to try to change your mind. My objective is to be an active listener and be curious, and then hopefully you reciprocate that once you see me doing the same thing. And then if we can build some type of relationship of being able to at least reach out to each other at some point in time, that's perfect, because then maybe you feel comfortable to ask me something about something that you're not really sure or understand what the big deal is, and maybe I can do the same thing to you, right? And I've been able to do that personally with a lot of things that have come up that may have been anti-Semitic in the Jewish community, right? Me not being Jewish, me not maybe fully understanding and having that much of proximity to the Jewish community, but I've been able to build those relationships. And when something comes up, I can say, hey, I don't like, I'm gonna tell you a perfect example. That may be a hot take, but this is a perfect example. Some people say that the Palestine and Israel, some people call it a conflict, some people call it a genocide, right? I was talking to a Jewish professor and took offense to the word genocide, and he broke that down to me. I wouldn't have never thought about it being offensive to Jewish people until he told me, right? And what that meant to him. And so those type of things to me is very helpful, because I'm not Jewish, but I had somebody I can talk to about that. And I had somebody who's going to be not judgmental and in judging me by coining it a specific way, but take the time to help me understand and why he thought it was offensive to call it genocide, and have that civil conversation. That don't mean we had to agree, but I was an active listener and was able to respect his thoughts and his perspective and his Jewishness, right? Because that's his community. And so those type of things have really helped me. And again, this is like, some of this stuff is like real time things a lot, but that's what I've been able to do, Ron.
Yeah, thank you for that example. I think it again goes back to what you were talking earlier about with brave spaces and kind of leaning
Yeah.
into that. And I think so much of being brave is being able to say, I don't know something, right? And being able to be asked those questions and find those, whether they're close community members or experts, and just being able to be like, look, I'm not understanding this. Could you help me with XYZ, right? And again, we were talking earlier about the importance of libraries, and libraries are one of those great resources for that, where
Yeah.
um, it's like they're there to support you to find those answers, right? And help you kind of not only to find the answers, but find the next questions that those answers lead to, right?
Yeah. And I think, again, like social media, I think can like convolute that, right? A
Yeah.
lot. Um, and so we just have to be intentional about how we go about those things, because of social media and kind of what we see. And then, social media can be very judgmental, right? And so, judge social media might not be the best. It can be the best in a worse space at the same time to be brave and courageous. Just because of, like, of people just looking to criticize and be adversarial, right? And then, so it might not be the most healthy environment, but if you can have a one-on-one connection, if you can know like actual people that'll be patient with you, and you know this, Jacob, like man, living abroad in Paraguay, not knowing Spanish, right, right, and really having an appreciation of what maybe immigrants and refugees that move to the United States to have to learn English, like and thought about, man, have I been patient with a non-English speaker? Like, and like being able to have those type of things, man, like we really got to think about. And so giving each other grace, you know that's one of the biggest things too. I've leaned into the years, just giving people grace and know that people are trying their best, especially if they're trying, and everybody, myself included, is not going to get it right all the time. We're going to have mistakes, we're going to have fumbles, and I think we should definitely keep an open perspective on that, and just give each other grace in the community.
It's a great point, and I think that leads right into DJ's comment here about the importance of trying to connect with new neighbors as people move into Vermont, because similar to Nashville, Vermont's kind of in this kind of housing crisis mode with trying to create that as many people come in, and affordable housing is a big issue. And yeah, it's like reaching out and trying to make connection with those new people in the area.
Yeah, so this is like I talk about this in my book a little bit about how like gentrification is going rapid here in Nashville, right? And we have an influx of people moving in from the West Coast, Midwest, and East Coast. Just because of like Nashville is expensive for Nashvillians now, but not so much from others who coming from bigger markets with bigger
Right.
corporations, right? And so gentrification is going rapid, right? And a lot of gentrification is happening in historical Black communities, right? And one of the things that we highlight in my book is that you can determine what type of gentrifier you want to be, right? And I think that's important for community members to know, right? Gentrification, it happens all the time. It's not unique to Nashville or Vermont. It's happening everywhere across the United States. But you can choose how you use your new resources that you might have as a new community member, right? It's one thing if DJ has been, living in Vermont his whole life, and he see his street is drastically changing. Well, if somebody has been there his whole life, he can definitely call people in and say, hey, this is Vermont, and this is what's been going on. But those newcomers have to be willing to as well to understand, and maybe even like understand that they may be participating in some type of harm by moving into that community, which is very true, which is not their fault, but it's something they can be made aware of, and they can dictate what type of gentrifier they want to be. Are they going to be a gentrifier that kind of boxes themselves in and creates this fence um against or in spite of historical community members that have been there? Are they gonna create a open yard to be educated, to learn and know about the community, and figure out how they can use their resources to better the community, and also be an active listener of the historical residents of that community, right? And so that's been my kind of talking point around those things, especially here in Nashville. But we know it's happening all across the United States in these metropolitan cities where you have a lot of people trying to look for more affordable markets, but also kind of like get the quality of life they live. And Nashville just happens to be one of those cities right now in the United States, coining the term "it city," but it's like you can easily create two different cities, and you have to be very intentional by making sure you're still creating an environment for long-term existing native residents, and not just creating a place that is for people that just can afford it now, or just tourism in general. They can price people out and cause homelessness and other type of crises that we see.
Yeah, no, it's like I just want to kind of sit here and chat with you about these things for so long. It's like I know going back from knowing each other for a bit,
Part two. We
it's
can
always
do a
fun.
part two. We can do a
We
part.
could do a part two. That's definitely true. But I just want to give one last call to attendee questions, in case any others come in. But again, just thank you, Jerome, for your time this evening and lending your insights and all the work that you're doing on the ground with Nashville and raising those voices up, because it's definitely apparent listening to your podcasts, and I'm looking forward to exploring your book. Um, and yeah, it's like if you want to learn more about Jerome, follow his social media that's been on his little background there. So
Yeah, y'all can
you
see
can
it all
follow
of
all that
that.
and see when his new PBS show drops, because that should be coming soon, right?
Yeah, so actually, so you can the PBS shows is we already started. We're in our second season.
Nice.
So if you just search Nashville Public Television on YouTube, you can watch all of the episodes there, or you can catch us live on PBS. Um, it's a monthly, every second Friday of the month. Actually tomorrow we're doing a live audience to broadcast with live with Tim Wise and myself. And so of course it's gonna be free pizza there.
Nice.
And so I definitely encourage you all to check that out. It'll be live streamed on YouTube as well. I know PBS sometimes is funny depending on where you live. It only like curates your PBS satellite
All
station.
right.
But if you go to National Public Television on YouTube, it'll be live up there. So we'll go live at 8 p.m. Central Time. So that will be at 9 p.m. you all's time,
Wow.
I believe. And so definitely I encourage you all to tune into that. It's gonna be a great conversation. You all won't be able to enjoy the pizza that's there, but you can eat in spirit, or order your own and be there.
All right. Well, thank you again, and looking forward to seeing this. And as always, thank you to the Ilsley Library for helping support this, and as well to Sabrina and Crystal, our ASL interpreters for the night. Thanks again. And we hope you join us again for another program. Our last completely virtual event is next Wednesday before we go back to our hybrid schedule with in-person programs at the libraries and live streams from there. So definitely reach out with any questions, and have a great night, everyone. Thanks again.